Oh boy, Harman Smith cannot keep GTA 6 out of his mouth. Let's get into it.
I released a statement a couple of days ago saying that Grand Theft Auto 6 will fail. And immediately I was bombarded with comments saying, well, actually, that game is going to be wildly successful and sell a ton of comment. Yes, that's what I said. The game is going to sell a ton of units, 100 million units, and still fail because
No, you didn't say that. What do you mean it's going to sell 100 million units but still fail? That's not how that works, Harman. Okay, most of your games can't even, will never reach the height of 100 million. That is at the next level of any game to even accomplish something like that. It's a miracle to hit 10 million units, let alone 100 million.
Grand Theft Auto is not just a video game, it's basically an idol, the basically the representation of everything wrong with not only gaming but in society as a whole.
Grand Theft Auto is a cultural phenomenon. That's why it's hit. I believe with all the Grand Theft Auto games combined, it's hit a little over 400 million units sold worldwide. You know how much of a prestige level you have to be to hit that kind of level, Harman?
The fact that we prop up some mediocre open world franchise just because you can run around shooting cops doesn't make the game good. It doesn't make it engaging. It doesn't make it fresh, original, or exciting. The simple fact of the matter is nobody actually likes Grand Theft Auto.
Aw, are you sad that too many people want to play Grand Theft Auto and they don't want to play Princess Peach Showtime with you? You can admit it, Harman. This is a safe space.
It is not a fun video game to play. The only reason people play it is because it's the mature game for mature gamers. It is everything wrong with video games.
The only thing here that is wrong is you. What's wrong is your mother actually got you a Nintendo console. Your mother should have never introduced you to video games, but actually I'm glad that she did because it just makes more content for me.
Condensed into one IP. There is no creativity, there is no originality, there is no reason to keep coming back and again and again. Grand Theft Auto is a complete and total joke.
The only joke here is that you're actually trying to make people believe that you really ran a mile in your short video. There is no way you ran a mile. And I actually would have praised you if you would have ran a mile. I would have said good job, and you would have earned it. But with how overweight you are and out of shape you are, you would have been breathing extremely heavily, and there would have been so much sweat dripping from you. There wasn't a single bead of sweat coming from that head of yours.
That only sells to the kind of person that doesn't actually like or play video games.
No, that's what Princess Peach Showtime was.
That's Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto will do well, but it will not drive sales for Xbox and PlayStation. It will not save other unrelated third parties, and the gaming crash is going to continue unabated.
Well, the gaming crash is still on point, but Nintendo's going to be part of that gaming crash, and Grand Theft Auto 6 will drive up sales of the other consoles. You best believe that one.
That is why Grand Theft Auto 6 will be a failure, because it will not save the gaming industry.
It's still going to be a success. Just because if it doesn't save the gaming industry doesn't mean it's going to be a failure. Guess what, Harman? The gaming industry will survive without Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. There will be other things to come up and take its place. You best believe that it will sit there and continue on.
Grand Theft Auto, alongside every other major gaming IP that has not yet made the jump to Nintendo consoles, is going to flounder on these failing pieces of alternative hardware and just get buried by the legions of better games on the better piece of hardware.
You do realize PC is going to bury them all one day. I hope you realize that. Even those mobile devices you like to bring up is going to bury Nintendo.
Right? Something like Rhythm Heaven isn't going to outperform Grand Theft Auto, but, Rhythm Heaven coupled with Tamagotchi Life, coupled with Mario Kart, coupled with Donkey Kong Bonanza, we are going to have...
It's sad that you have to take multiple games to try to take down one game, and even with all those games combined, you're still not going to hit the level of what Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be.
Variety in our game lineups. a lot of these games are going to sell like upwards of 10 million units, you know.
Maybe Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. There's no way those other games are going to sit there and hit 10 million plus.
A lot of them are going to do very, very well for themselves. You know, the sales of those games are going to drive the sales of other games. You know, something that Grand Theft Auto has completely failed at over the years.
One successful game is not going to drive the sales of what those other mediocre games. That is not how that works, Harman.
You know, like Nintendo, like the Pokemon brand is a really good example of this, right? You know, why is Pokemon bigger than Grand Theft Auto?
How many Pokemon games are there, Harman? Compared to how many Grand Theft Auto games? I think there's like triple or quadruple the amount of Pokemon games compared to Grand Theft Auto. And you can sit there and just take Grand Theft Auto 5, not a single Pokemon game hits the level of what Grand Theft Auto 5 hit.
It has more reasonable development cycles. You know, we get a new gen every 3 years or so.
I actually don't have a disagreement with them. I think it was ridiculous how long it took us to get to Grand Theft Auto 6.
You know, we get actual spin-offs. We get merchandising. We get, you know, mobile games, animated series. We get, like, you know, the works, right? Pokemon, the trading card game, you know, like, Pokemon is a brand that can actually create synergy with itself. You know, like a couple of years back, people were whining about like Pokemon Sword and Shield launching the way it did because, like, well, they should have just delayed the card game. That's not how it works.
Well, yes, they should have delayed it, but also Sword and Shield was a terrible game. That story mode, or the story of Pokemon Sword and Shield, was the worst story we have ever gotten in any mainline Pokemon game. That game was an abomination, should be forgotten.
You know, a major part of their business strategy is creating synergy with like the other aspects of the brand. They have to release new gens around the same time they as like, you know, other products, you know, like it's a constantly evolving brand, right? That's always introducing new characters and new ideas and new things into the franchise, right?
So because they have a schedule, we should sit there and give them a break because they give us a half-baked game? No, I don't think so.
Pokemon has the greatest brand synergy I've ever seen. And I think a lot of people don't really understand what makes it so successful.
Because it's made for children, plain and simple.
Grand Theft Auto 6 is Grand Theft Auto is a really interesting comparison because on the surface, you would imagine Grand Theft Auto was a way bigger brand than Pokemon, with how people talk about it and like how many people play these games and just how much they sell. But the reality of the situation is,
yeah, I don't think that anybody thought that Grand Theft Auto makes more money than Pokemon as a brand. Are you kidding me? Pokemon is such a worldwide name, everybody knows what Pokemon is. Yeah, most people know what Grand Theft Auto are, but I guarantee you there are way more people worldwide that knows what Pokemon is versus Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto cannot succeed in anything outside of the mainstream, mainline video game entries because the reason Grand Theft Auto is popular, you know, the fact that it's the most cutting edge open world crime simulator there is, right?
Yes, Grand Theft Auto is a video game, nothing more. It doesn't have anything else more. Could they have more? Maybe, but they don't. It's just a video game. So yes, it is more popular in the video game industry. It is more popular than any of Nintendo's IPs. There is not a single Nintendo IP that hits the level of what Grand Theft Auto 5 hit.
It simply isn't replicatable on weaker hardware or in like
yes, like Nintendo
variety of games. So like for example, like you couldn't produce a video game in the Grand Theft Auto universe where you're a normal person who is not a criminal, you know, living his everyday life and like, you know, getting into like, you know, scuffles with gangs and like working to make his way out. And, you know, like they would never do what Yakuza does, right?
That is the point of Grand Theft Auto. You generally will play as a criminal. For all you know, they might switch it up a bit with the next one. They might have you play as an undercover cop.
Where like a major part of the plot is that like, you know, the characters actually do treat civilians with respect and actually don't get into fights like at the press of a button, right? You know, the entire appeal of Grand Theft Auto is that you're a loose cannon who goes around just running over driving over squirrels and just, causing general mayhem, right?
And that's why many people like it. Who cares? You're just jealous right now that Grand Theft Auto, even though it got delayed, it's still taking the spotlight away from Nintendo, and you can't handle it.
You can't have any variation on that. You can't grow the brand. You can't do anything differently other than what they've always been doing, you know.
I mean, that's the same thing with like Pokemon. They can't sit there and grow and create a game that's not in a broken state when it launches.
This is why something like, Chinatown Wars didn't do all that well. This is why nobody like remembers.
Chinatown Wars has sold over 1 million copies, so it is not a failure in any means. Now, it didn't do very well on the DS because it originally released on the DS, and I believe it only sold 90,000 copies. Would you like to know why? Because the Nintendo DS was for children, so the parents weren't going to let them play that game.
The first two games, right? The entire appeal is being 3D and just murdering, progressively more realistic looking NPCs. Like without that, Grand Theft Auto has nothing. There is.
Okay, and like with Pokemon, if you sit there and take out the battling in there, then what does Pokemon games got? Nothing, because they would be boring. If you take out the combat out of any game, what do you got? All you got is a walking simulator. No one really wants to play those games.
Nothing to the brand that would contribute to, like, say, a trading card game or a board game, or like, there's just nothing there. Like, at its core, Grand Theft Auto is very, very, very generic.
There's nothing generic about Grand Theft Auto. You know how many people have tried to steal the thunder from Grand Theft Auto? You had Driver, and you had some other games, and they're still not around. Even Saints Row fell.
A strength of theirs when it comes to like selling their mainline video games, but when it comes to like building an actual brand, when it comes to like, having to compete with something like Pokemon, like it just completely falls flat on its face.
That is why Grand Theft Auto whoops Pokemon every time when a game comes out. That's why Grand Theft Auto after this one is probably going to surpass the entire franchise of Pokemon.
Right? Grand Theft Auto is never going to be able to compete with Pokemon. People are going to start realizing that like Nintendo games are better made and more engaging, right? Mario Kart is actually does have the capacity to be bigger than Grand Theft Auto.
Yep, you're so right. That's why not a single one of those games have ever come close to the height of Grand Theft Auto 5.
Grand Theft Auto is going to have this like period where it stagnates and then it falls. Like once it stops being like seen as the prestigious, AAA, the AAA game.
Don't worry, Harman. Just because you can't compete in the AAA space doesn't mean your poor Nintendo games can't compete in the AA space. Well, actually, they're getting their ass whooped by those with Expedition 33.
I think Grand Theft Auto is going to fall off very, 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 very quickly.
That's why more people are excited to play this game than any of your precious Nintendo games.
You can't 13 years producing a video game and then have it come out and then be underwhelming compared to like what Nintendo is doing, right?
I mean, yeah, I actually do agree with you. You can't take 13 years like you did, made us wait, and then it come out not that good. It needs to be polished to perfection. Just like with Mario Kart World, it better not have a single problem with it being released at $80, the first $80 game. That game better be perfect coming out.
I imagine a bunch of like delusional fanboys will continue defending Grand Theft Auto no matter what, but I do think the path forward is clear when it comes to like, how Red Dead Redemption 2 was received, and just
Red Dead Redemption 2 was received very well, and yes, the way forward is these games are gonna whoop Nintendo's ass, plain and simple.
What's been happening since then, like, people put Rockstar games on a pedestal just because they're Rockstar games. But when you actually sit down and play them, like, you'll see anybody who plays more than 2 games a year will see that they progressively decline in quality.
Harman, just because you have to switch out games every 30 minutes because you get bored with them doesn't mean that you're a true gamer, so you should probably keep your mouth shut before you get too far ahead.
That they're not interesting, that they're not evolving, that they're not really doing a whole lot. They're taking themselves way, way too seriously.
Coming from the guy who has an altar for Doug Bowser to worship him.
I do think that's the big thing that's been like causing the franchise to circle the drain since Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, is that like, yeah, these games take themselves way too seriously for what they are.
Yeah, that's why Grand Theft Auto 4, 5, and 6 have won Game of the Year. More than Nintendo ever will.
And they have to, because like if you can't take them seriously, they're not mature enough. You know, it's
Yeah, you wanna know why you're laughing? It's because you're suffering from cognitive dissonance. I understand, Harman, that common sense that's trying to reach into your brain, let it flow through, just accept it.
but I do think that like when it comes to like actual hardcore video gamers, actual players
Harman, how many times do we have to go through this? Just because you have played and beaten Princess Peach Showtime does not mean you're a hardcore gamer.
who like play these games, like I'm seeing more and more people talk about like how like, Grand Theft Auto 5 was not that good. Like I know people who like bought that day one, popped it in and were just like, this is awful.
Harman, if the voices from the Pikachu is telling you this, you really need to go get some help.
And I think anybody who's like an actual mature adult will kind of feel this way. Like that's the great irony of Grand Theft Auto, I think, is that like
Mature, huh? Coming from a guy who's holding a Pikachu against its will.
it purports itself to be like a mature game for mature gamers, but in actuality, like its biggest audience, its player base are basically little children. You know,
You're a Nintendo fanboy. You got no room to talk about a game being for children when the majority of your catalog is for children.
people who just want to run red lights and just want to like fire guns and don't know anything about what's going on. That's the Grand Theft Auto audience. Is just like people that have just gotten out of preschool.
All right, if this man ever reproduces, which I hope that God does not curse us to allow this man to reproduce, but if he ever does reproduce, I really hope he does not let a preschool kid play Grand Theft Auto. If anybody allows a preschooler to play Grand Theft Auto, in my mind, that is child abuse. Well, that's it for my reaction. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with me or not. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay vigilant.